What I feel we should all agree on is that we have age restrictions on buying liquor, driving a car, voting, age of consent, and we're in agreement that the frontal lobe or people's brains are not fully developed before their early 20s, at the earliest late teenage years, right? So why are we allowing like gender affirming surgeries and or learning about those things while they're in that vulnerable stage? Why can't we all agree on that? Like, we don't allow parents to say, "Hey, I think my kid can drive a car," right? So like,
Correct.
why would you say, "Hey, let them say, you know what, I'm gonna give them pills that's gonna depress their testosterone or raise their estrogen"? Like, I don't
My
understand
und-
how that's even like allowed.
my understanding is that it's extraordinarily rare and only done when professional, like medical professionals, firmly believe that this is the difference between this child either living or dying by suicide, or some other like quite long term negative life and or health consequences.
So that's the threshold.
Saving lives, yes, that
No,
is the
no, that's fine. No, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. If the person's going to
yeah. People
unalive
don't
themselves or
like.
whatever.
There are completely fair questions people in the what I don't even know what generation people who are in middle school and high school are now, but I've seen things where that generation, they are identifying as trans at 1,000 times the rate it was, only a couple of years ago. And people say, well, if you look at graphs of left-handed people, it dramatically shot up when it was not stigmatized by the population. It's like,
I'm
yes,
left-handed.
but oh, you're left-handed? I'm left-handed too.
Yeah.
And yes, but thousands of times does seem to be a little bit preposterously high. And a lot of these people turn out to just be gay. They come out as gay later in life. But when you're a kid, you experiment with your identity and you try to find yourself. I mean, I had highlights in my hair in 7th grade, and it's like it was so not me. That was just something I was trying out. But when it comes to I don't think for people that have like severe, whether you want to call it gender dysphoria or whatever, they're not trying that on the same way kids try on different clothes. Okay, these things where they're either going on puberty blockers or whatever, they're extraordinarily rare, and they are extraordinary circumstances. So, I get the idea where it's like, shouldn't we be like really cautious about this? But I just, at the same time, I don't distrust medical professionals enough to think that they're doing this just for a grift, and that they don't understand that the calculus involved has to do with the actual like life and well-being of the child.
The thing is though, like, if okay, this might sound silly, but if someone said, "I need to be able to drive at 12, or I'm gonna hurt myself," like, would a medical professional be allowed to get an exemption for them to start driving? Like,
No, because this is a false equivalence, because a 12-year-old behind the wheel of a car is dangerous to other people. A
okay.
12-year-old who goes on puberty blockers is not a danger to other people.
So what about if they needed to drink alcohol or something?
Alcohol is harmful to everybody. Like,
Yeah, but
it isn't necessarily, but we just know that like alcohol is the most dangerous drug on the planet, actually.
I would, but that's why there's an age restriction, and we want people to be fully like mentally aware of the risks of it before they engage in it. Obviously, people drink because
Yeah,
they're underage, but
yeah, but again, it's mostly because it causes them to be. You can make the argument that it's a danger to themselves, but getting gender affirming care doesn't kill people. Not
yeah,
getting
but it's
gender affirming
harmful.
care increases the risk of suicide. But drinking alcohol can not only kill you, but it can kill other people. And children just shouldn't, for like the reasons you listed, driving and drinking just aren't good ideas socially for children.
But puberty blockers could have irreversible changes to them when they're older.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of surgery carries risks like that. This is a unique, I don't know what to call it. It's a unique thing, and it seems like I can understand being squeamish about it because it seems like you're intervening in like the biology of a human being or whatever. But again, there are guidelines in place for this. I can't tell you what they are. I'm sure they have boring names like 271846, whatever.
If the threshold is as high as you're saying, whether it's something that's a risk to their life, like self-harm, then if that is the threshold, I'm okay with that as the threshold. But it needs to be like legitimate that high. Like the threshold cannot be something lower than that. I think that's like, you pretty much picked the only thing that I would agree with. Right? They're going to self-harm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we agree on that.
Okay, that's good.
Diagnosis. I'm trying to find puberty. U.S. patients between the ages of 6 to 17 with prior gender dysphoria diagnosis initiating puberty blocker treatment. The most recent year is 2021. This is of all the people in the United States, well, of all the people in that age range, 1,390. So 1,400 kids in the entire country
have puberty blockers.
Yeah, and that's an extremely small number.
Yeah, I guess like if we could go off that. My next thing is that what about learning about these things in school when you would block someone from being able to like access pornography, right? You would block them from watching a +18 film, like in a movie theater, because you feel like it's detrimental to that child. Why are we teaching them about transgender and that kind of stuff when they're like 7 or 8?
So, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about when this is actually introduced and to what extent it's actually part of any like state curriculum. If teachers are doing it, and it's not like state sanctioned, then that's a very different conversation. That's a cultural conversation we need to have, I guess. But, with regard to, I don't know, with regard to that, like, I don't find there being anything wrong with necessarily with teaching kids that there are people like this in the world, you know. Now, I am not into Drag Queen Story Hour, for example. I think that's a dumb idea. You can cancel me if you want for that. I don't give a fuck. But in terms of these other things, I can understand, like, you can be a kid and you can be like, it's confusing, and like there's the scare that a kid when they're young and they don't know enough is going to be told about like transgenderism, and then they're going to say that they are, but they don't really know. And then, I don't know, later on in life, they either just change their mind or they grow out of it, but there could be like irreversible consequences from it. I'm just not scared about that kind of thing. I do think that there is an appropriate age for this. I don't have a good comparison for this specific thing, but like sex education, it used to make me really squeamish, the idea that any kind of like sex education would be taught to like kids, like, you know, around 2nd or 3rd grade or whatever.
I think that's too young anyways, but
well, what I started to learn,
experiment at that point, right? Like sex education, I believe, is once you feel like they have the opportunity to put themselves in a situation where like an 11-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy could end up doing the wrong thing without having that education, then yes, teach them about condoms and safe, like,
so,
that kind of thing, right? But
okay, let me interrupt, because sex education doesn't have to be about how to have sex or anything like that. What I started to learn, what made me change my mind, was really little kid, like, well, not even really little, like it's weird. You have to teach a kid to wipe their ass, right? And like as a teacher, and I don't teach kids that young, but as a teacher, I have heard stories of kids who are like in 3rd, 4th grade, stuff like that, and they don't wipe their butt, or they only do it sometimes, for example, like stuff like that. And what really got me over this though was that police and people that like counselors and people that investigate like sexual trauma with kids, what they came to realize is because kids don't understand those parts of their bodies, when they're abused, they don't know what happened to them. And that sounds really weird, but again, kids need to be taught that you're supposed to wipe your butt. They just don't. It's really hard to make yourself understand that kids don't know that. But by teaching kids just the absolute rudimentary basics of like, this is what your penis is, this is what your vagina is, it's not okay for somebody else to ever whatever. If they know that, then they can that just basically it makes abuse able to be caught at far better rates. And so I was completely, because when you don't know that and you hear like sex education with 2nd graders, like what the fuck, but you realize that they're not teaching them about like how to have sex or anything like that. It's just being told about their bodies,
Anatomy.
Then I'm okay with it, and we know that it helps. So
I'm fine with anatomy. I was more thinking about like the leading them towards paths of like, you can like a boy, you can like a girl, you can do this, you can do that, opening up those avenues for children before it needs to be opened up, kind of thing. I would want that to be self-evident in the person rather than someone saying to explore it, right?
Yeah, I'm probably with you for most of that. I don't like as an educator, I don't want to impose what I how do I want to say this? I don't want to impose like my values on them. I just want to educate them and make them aware of things. So I guess I would agree that like probably in middle school, well, really at any point, I don't think you should tell kids to explore their sexuality. That is not okay. But you can tell people that there are people that are like this, there are people that are like that, and there are people that are even different. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things. I think that's about as far as we should go with it, and people will be able to make up their own mind, because there probably is a culture, like I don't know how to say this, almost like a bandwagon cultural effect of kids doing what they hear and say and think is popular amongst each other. And like, to give you an insane example, there was this school in America. This was not, it was probably more than 10 years ago now, but they formed a pregnancy pact. Like, all the girls in the school agreed that they would get pregnant before they graduated. And so there was just this insane amount of teen pregnancy in this one school. And it was like, what the fuck is going on? So yes, kids are weird like that. And they will do weird things like that. And so you just want to try to make sure you're not creating some sort of like weird viral thing that betrays what the actual values and identities of those kids is, because they are impressionable. But
100%, they need to be sheltered, and then the sheltering process needs to be reduced as they grow older. When they're 2 years old or 1 year old, you can't even they can't even leave your sight. You're sheltering them, right?
Right.
And then they would touch a hot stove and burn their hand. But then as they get older, you can start to remove some of those that sheltering as people feel, or their parents feel, or whatever, that they are ready to be able to handle that new information, right? But I think we're on the same page, pretty much.
Yeah, what I don't, and I didn't hear you, I'm not accusing you of this because I didn't hear it from you, but what I don't believe in is their parents will teach them that. They won't. Okay, for the most part, they don't. Mm-hmm. And so that's just, that doesn't work either.
whatever is necessary for a children's like advancement in life, like a good one. As a society, we need to make sure that we provide that in school so that they're not missing. And then the other stuff, yes, parents can deal with that, right? But if you're saying parents won't do something, we still allow parents to homeschool kids, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a legal right that they have.
Do you agree with that?
Can you hear
Do
me?
you agree with? Yeah, well,
Sorry, I had to disconnect because my cat has been scratching at at the door like a maniac for 10 minutes. So I had to leave the computer and let her in.
Sounds like a plan. I have one other comment that is going to be probably very, very controversial for the chat. And it's in regards to the evolution of males and females, like throughout thing. I have the opinion that females in general have not been afforded the same opportunities as men, and I think that's going to be everyone's going to agree with that. Like they weren't able to go to school, learn, read, and write the same way males were. Do you feel like that passed down in like the genetic makeup of females to the point where today their intellectual capacity might be just below, like on average females could be smarter than males, but at the very pinnacle of things they don't have, they're going to eventually, but they're not going to be the top of something. Like the top 50 chess players are going to be male, the top IQ test results are going to be male. Like, do you feel like the hundreds of thousands of years beforehand have stopped females from being able to be the very, very top of intellectual capacity?
That's kind of an interesting question, and it sounds a lot like people say, like, people will point to, like, in the black community in America there are disparities in, like, rates of crime and things like that, and it's like, or like with Native Americans, the rate of alcohol use. And it's like, yes, but we understand this concept of generational trauma. And so there can be an explanation for it. And the explanation isn't that certain types of people are just, well, everybody's different, but there are groups of people that are, I don't know, have propensities for that. There are like external causes. But anyways, I don't think so for this one, because half the DNA in every woman comes from a man. So if the men always had this advantage, they'd be passing on average, half their genes to their daughters, and every son gets half their genes from their mom too. So even if that was a thing, the genetic recombination would cancel it out.
But there's something about that. On average, I believe, like, if you looked at like a bell curve, I feel females could have a higher average, right? Like even in today's world, and it's probably going to grow like going down the line. But at that top 1% or top 0.5%, you don't see females there. And I feel like talent would win out, like intellectual talent would win out, so that we would see them there. I don't think you can hide that type of talent. So like, why can't we get a female chess player in the top 50? Like, I don't understand why that's not possible.
So the deal with this is it has to do with the way you look at overlapping bell curves. So if two bell curves are not identical, but the difference between them in the middle is microscopic, what happens with that is when you get to the end, the tail end of the distribution, we call that, then what happens is, in the middle, it's completely indistinguishable, but at the very, very, very end, the ratio becomes like 100-1 or 1,000-1, And it goes the other way too. Like with men in prison, the vast majority of people that commit violent crime are men, but men and women aren't that much different on average. On average, 99% of men never commit a violent crime, and 99% of it's probably not that high, but
I would think that would be like some kind of genetic, like testosterone levels and adrenaline and that kind of stuff might make men more violent than women.
Yeah, a little bit, but the point is just when you look at the data that way, the tail end of extremes in the middle, the average can be there's virtually no difference.
Yeah,
but at the
agreed.
tail ends, it magnifies to like 1,000 to 1. So, like the vast majority
if it did magnify to 1,000 to 1, though, wouldn't we find some, like, I understand outliers, I don't understand statistics, like, I understand
Yep.
the curves. What I'm trying to understand is that if looked at the top SAT score written, it's going to be male. If you look at the top the top IQs, the top, like, any way you wanted to find something at the top of something, it's going to be male. And
I've
I
heard that the 2 highest IQs ever recorded were women, but I don't know 100% if that's true. So I think so. The other thing about this, I have to try to move this really quick.
Second place for IQ.
What's that?
There's a girl in second for IQ. There's a couple guys that are they say the range between like 230 and 240 or whatever, and there's a girl that has a 212, but still not first. Right?
It doesn't really matter. It was just an interesting thing, but the other thing about it, like, I gotta try to think of how I can say this really quick because I have to go. But
that was really funny on the chat. Top WNBA players, women.
Facts. So even if, like, with that tail end distribution thing, even if it's still like, 1,000 to 1, men over women or women over men or whatever, that's no guarantee of anything. So you may say, like, well, yeah, even if it's 10 to 1 in favor of men, there should still be 10% of them that are women, but we don't find 10%. But that's because that's not the only thing. There's also the thing of, like, personal choice. So, like, men, for example, are far more likely to be super autistic and dedicate their life to some weird hyper-specific thing like STEM subjects or chess or something like that. Whereas women, on average, yes, there are women that like this kind of thing, like Temple Grandin and others. But on average, they tend to not be inclined in that direction. So you start with, it's already rare in the first place, and then you add into it the personal choices that men and women have that are slightly different, and then that can account for the additional missing whatever.
Maybe, but, like, if you look at games like, so it's like Go or like, I don't care if it's like bridge or poker or almost anything. Like, curling is a sport that doesn't involve physical, like, strength. It's just like you're just kind of sliding a rock down thing, and you'll see that the men's teams are always better than the female. Like, I want you to find me something that doesn't involve physical strength that there's a woman at the pinnacle, right? Like, it's considered the best.
For, like, endurance running, for whatever reason, like hyper endurance running, women have, the longer the race gets, the women have the advantage.
Okay. That's physical,
I would say not being a serial killer. that would be one thing.
They win there, yes.
Yeah. So you definitely got us on that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's pretty much what I had to say.
It would be fine to talk about this more and get a panel, but, like, I literally have to go.
Pool billiards, but still, if you look at Efren Reyes, I watch a lot of pool, I watch snooker, it's going to be guys at the top 2 there. It's going to be guys at the top, the very top. I'm saying, even when it comes to education, like college degrees and stuff, females can surpass males on average. I just feel like if you go to the very top, that top little percent, is that something that they're not, is there something holding back females from achieving that because of past like the last thousands of years? Someone said not 100,000 years, last 6,000 years. I feel like the last 6,000 years has stopped them from achieving that top 0.1%, and that's changing slowly, and we're going to get to that point. I think the females that are born today, we're going to see them up there, hopefully, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because people are attacking you, but you're literally saying
I know.
The system has been rigged against them, and which, if you're, which people agree with. Like if you think that this guy's being misogynistic, you would agree that the system's been rigged against them. And so, but the one thing I will say, and I have to go after this, is what we might be doing here is we might be saying, hey, women are not as represented, or we're not finding them in these areas. But for so long, like maybe those are just men-centric things, and we just aren't valuing or thinking of things that women exceed better in than men, because those things either don't have a lot of political or social or monetary capital. And so we say, oh, so we don't even think about the things that they would be way better than us at. So that would be
Fashion,
that would
or
definitely
clothes
be
and stuff
a big part. I gotta go. I'm literally ending it.
Bye.